Here we've got some miscellaneous internal control items, just looking over the internal control process as a whole. What are the objectives here? Well, we want reliable financial reporting, we want effectiveness and efficiency of the operations of the entity, and compliance with applicable laws and regulations. Here are some critical controls, and we'll see that this ties into our, you may recognize this as essentially the COSO framework, the Committee on Sponsoring Organizations, their internal control framework. We've got the control activities an entity should have. This is going to make sure that we properly authorize transactions, have segregation of duties, pre-numbered documents so that we don't have any duplicates of documents and we can trace every document to itself. And lastly, performance reviews to ensure that our people within the organization are operating effectively. Then we have risk assessment, concerns about adopting a new accounting policy. We want to make sure that we are assessing the risks when involved with that. Any new personnel and technology could introduce new risks to an organization. Those would be something to watch out for. And corporate restructuring, also a risk in an organization. The company should always be embodying all of these concerns. Now, when it comes to information and communication for internal controls, we want proper presentation of transactions and related disclosures on the financial statements. We want measurement and recording of proper monetary values. And lastly, we want to understand how significant events are captured in the accounting system. Really, for monitoring of internal controls, that is going to come down to the internal audit function, the internal audit department. Going to hire some people to work as internal auditors. Maybe they're ex-independent auditors. They worked for an accounting firm. Now they work for you in your company. And lastly here, the control environment, the environment overall with the organization. Participation of those charged with governance is going to be important, making sure the board of directors, who are the fiduciaries of the organization, are being involved and overseeing the company in a positive manner. We want to assign authority, responsibility, and accountability to everyone in the organization. And we want to have a solid and effective human resources, policies, and procedural environment. Now, here are some critical controls. Let's talk about these. You want to have pre-numbered documents, just like you have pre-numbered checks in your checkbook. You want to make sure that this is purchase order 1, purchase order 2, because that's a great way to make sure they're not duplicated. They are not going to be accidentally double paid. You want to make sure that, again, that no one's fraudulently creating a purchase order. If they don't have serial numbers, I'll call them, right? Numbers ahead of time. Someone could just draft up a purchase order or draft up a false document. And obviously that is not very good to see. Not ideal at all. Authorization, anything that happens in a company that is concerning or anything that happens that you could possibly cause issues with should be properly authorized. Independent checks within the organization. You have people come in and review. You have managers come in and review the work below them. Documentation, right? Obviously, if something's documented properly, you can go through and identify any issues. Timely and appropriate financial performance reviews. Those would very much help with the employees you have. Information process controls, making sure that information that's confidential and should not get out to anyone is being withheld. Physical controls, such as key cards, not anyone can get in the building. And then lastly, segregation of duties. Obviously, beat that one to death. As the auditor, it's your responsibility and to understand as well the evaluation and design of controls. Have these controls been implemented properly? You want to assess the risk within these controls, and you want to design procedures based on the risk of the controls so that you can effectively test the financial statements. You will have your walkthrough of internal controls during your planning stage. That's where you're going to make inquiries. You're going to ask the management and anyone involved in the internal control process to walk you through each most important internal control process, interviewing people along the way, seeing if what they are saying is actually true, if this process is being followed out as best as possible. You want to observe that in action, inspect documents, and reperform some of the actions that they say are being done to see if those actions are being done properly. Lastly here, you want to document internal controls. You want to take notes. If you have meetings with management, you want to take notes and minutes of those meetings. You have a questionnaire. There's questionnaires are used a lot in planning for an audit when you're going to send that to different people within the organization and have them answer questions. You want a flow chart of internal controls. Okay, cash is sent to this person, and then from there it goes to this department, and then it's given to the bank. And lastly here, you want to obtain procedural manuals and organizational charts. Those are going to be important to, again, document internal controls, understand who is in charge of what within the organization, so that when you actually go and test, you have these to back you up. I can recollect my time doing internal control walkthroughs for an audit and how that looked. I was on a It's doing it remote. However, obviously, this can be quite in person. Where this was a meeting online and multiple people. It was me, a manager, partner, some other individuals, and we were meeting with a couple individuals on the client's team. And we were discussing, okay, this is how the internal controls should look through. Here have been some issues in the past, and you go through a walkthrough. So let's say that one meeting was for revenue. We walk through control one, control two, control three for revenue. And then obviously we walk through significant controls for the other account balances and transactions. And that's the process overall. You walk through it. Now, hopefully, you have a flow chart. If not, you have a nice document that details any internal control processes and steps and individuals and personnel. And again, this is done during the planning stage. Obviously, you can do this whenever. I mean, generally, it's done during the planning stage. However, if you feel the need to do another walkthrough at any point, obviously feel free. But this is the process. You walk through, talk with the client, ask questions, ask through inquiry. So an auditor's walkthrough is a process where the auditor has client management describe the process and possibly provide diagrams. Then the auditor observes the client's internal controls in action. This could involve following a client's employees through their daily tasks, or it could simply involve the auditor observing the policies, procedures, and documentation. For us, we did it remote. Then we did our best to continue it remote as there were circumstances with which we could not visit the client site. However, ideally, it is in person. The purpose of the walkthrough is to gain an understanding of the client's internal controls and to assess their effectiveness. Again, this is really the best way when we talk about obtaining an understanding of a client's business environment. I mean, this is the best way to get an understanding of their internal controls, how it operates, and their environment. Discussions, meetings with the client, super important because you need to get an understanding overall of their whole process. Hey there! Are you ready to not only pass your CPA exams, but truly understand and enjoy the material while studying? I know it seems impossible, right? Especially to enjoy the material? We'll do it together. Tap into the power of cpa.examprep.ai, where we've got personalized quizzes, multiple choice questions, memorization guides, flashcards, simulations, all tailored to your learning. Our adaptive study planning puts you on the fastest path to success and lifts you back up if you fall behind. Avoid wasting your precious time and money attempting an exam with a low chance of passing, because who wants that? We want to get you through this process as quick as possible. Our exam readiness prediction lets you walk in with confidence, knowing that you're prepared for success on exam day. Thankfully, there's no payment method needed to get started, so why don't you come join us? Visit cpa.examprep.ai and let's achieve your exam success together.